The Jets Collective is live for episode 3, take number 2 of episode 3. Little tech issues behind the scenes, but we're here to bring you a live episode of the Jets Collective. My name is Jake Asman alongside BT Brandon Tierney and ESPN's Rich Cimini. Welcome in. Make sure if you're new that you are subscribed to the channel. Click that like button, help us continue to grow. We also have the show available in audio form on Apple, Spotify, or iHeart Podcasts, or just search the Jets Collective, and you can listen back to anything you may have missed. I'd say BT and Rich, how you guys doing? But I already know because we did a full 20-minute segment, so let's try this again.
Yeah.
What's going on, gentlemen? You ready to rock?
I'm still doing good. Still doing well. Rich, you okay? Everybody all right?
Yeah, just a little false start penalty. So what's the big deal? It's only 5 yards.
Only 5 yards. 2 weeks till the draft, and let's just dive right in because we got a lot to talk about with the Jets on the clock at pick number 2. Rich, can you break down what the latest is? Because it feels like there was all this momentum for Arvell Reese, and now over the last couple of days, you've had some prominent NFL insiders and draft analysts like Albert Breer, Daniel Jeremiah, Peter Schrager, all say that from their sources, they're hearing it's going to be David Bailey, not Arvell Reese. So what do you make of that, and where do things stand in your opinion?
Yeah. So the first thing is it's really not the Jets changing course. I object to that perception. That I think what happens is as you get closer to the draft, reporters start having a little bit more access to their sources. Their sources might have a little more information to share, and that's why you see stuff coming out closer to the draft. And as we get closer, I guarantee you from a week from now, when the teams are done with their draft meetings and these guys come out of the war rooms and they start calling people around the league and reporters start picking up on that information, it could change even again. So, yeah, I mean, I think we've thought all along Reese or Bailey. You know, those guys that you mentioned are thinking right now it's Bailey. Wouldn't shock me either way. You know, it depends who you talk to. I mean, all those three guys could be talking to the same person who thinks it's going to be Bailey. I can guarantee you this. No one on the Jets is leaking who they're going to pick. You try to play detective. You try to connect dots, talking to people around the league who might know, and you come up with a conclusion. So that's where things stand right now. We still got 2 weeks to go. We got a lot of smoke to get through.
By the way, my 11-year-old son knows the Jets are taking a defender too, and there's only so many names that have graded out highly enough where so the process of deduction leads us to Bailey, and before that, Reese. Rich, you've been doing this how many years? You've been on the Jets beat how many years? Have the Jets ever told you, hey, Rich, you know, maybe outside of Keyshawn, because everybody knew that was going to happen, hey, Rich, we're taking this guy. Like, really, I mean, you're as connected to them as anybody with any team around. Has anybody ever said that to you, ever?
Actually, Keyshawn didn't even know until the morning of the draft.
Okay,
because
there you go.
They were going through a lot of contract negotiations there. But, you know, no one's come right out and said, I'd have to go through year by year and see, you know, what the strategy was there. No one comes out and says, hey, you know, we're taking so-and-so. I mean, I think we all knew in 2021 that Zach Wilson was going to be the second pick because we all knew Trevor Lawrence was going 1. And the Jets, they didn't come out and say they were taking Zach Wilson, but I think it was kind of a wink and a nod that we all knew. That was the word coming out of the building. You know, it's different when you're in the second pick. Maybe there'll be a little bit more free with the information, knowing that nothing can really disrupt their plan. We all know Mendoza's going number 1, so it's not like someone's going to trade above them and steal Reese or Bailey. So maybe the Jets will be a little bit more forthcoming, but generally speaking, no one's advertising who they're going to pick.
Jake, I think one of the things the Jets had to do, and I think they're in the process of doing this, is, you know, first of all, like football stuff. All right, so get the penalties down, learn how to stop somebody in the passing game, shore up this and shore up everything, really, outside of the O-line. But even before all that, like the Jets had to button up the building. There were just too many loose lips, putting out information, and really, you know, spilling state secrets. It was sloppy. It was messy. So the fact that it seems buttoned up now, even with this new report that it's going to be Bailey, which I'm not fully buying, I think it's a sign, Jake, that the overall health of the Jets building is kind of going in the right direction. You agree?
I like that take. If they're able to then parlay what you're saying and maybe try and convince someone they're taking a certain player so they actually could get out of pick 2, because I think you and I are in agreement. I know, Rich, you've talked about it.
Yeah.
That the best thing for the Jets, we could debate Arvell Reese and David Bailey, and we'll do it this show. We'll do it next week leading into the draft, of course. I think the best thing is for them to find a trade partner. Rich, they had breakfast with Jeremiah Love. That came out last week. I mean, I just think the fact that no one necessarily knows what direction the Jets are going, I don't think that's a bad thing. I just would love for it to maybe lead to some sort of trade back from two.
Yeah, just for example, like what if the Jets have intel that the Arizona Cardinals are head over heels in love with David Bailey, picking right behind them? You know, maybe the Cardinals feel like it's worth it to give up a draft pick to move up one spot to get their guy. The Jets move to 3 and happily accept Reese and the extra draft capital that comes along with it. That could be part of the strategy as well. There's so much smoke that is sent around the league at this time of the year. We know that the fans, that's what makes it so fun, is because you just never really know. But you do hear some things, like I mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago, that whole Jackson Smith and Jigba thing. I knew the Jets weren't going to pick him going into that. I had a pretty good source, inside who tipped me off on that. But, occasionally you come across a crumb like that. But it's, like I said, there's so much. And the Jets are still going through their draft meetings. Really, they only picked it up this past Monday with all the scouts. They're meeting probably 12 hours a day to put together a draft board. And then once that gets done, probably later next week, then Muji will start calling around the league to get a feel for what other teams want to do in terms of moving up or down.
Listen, you got to play the game. To me, scared money's never going to win money. It's just not going to. We all know that from the casino. It doesn't happen. So while you don't actually put a sign out in Florham Park, hey, we want to trade, what you do is, you plant a little here, plant a little there, and then you try to entice somebody, reading the tea leaves. Maybe the Cardinals love Bailey. Maybe that's why this is out there now. And then through the process of elimination, you've got to find the teams that might be or more inclined to go defense. Like, I think Kansas City's going receiver. I think Miami's going receiver. I think the Saints are going defense. I think the Cardinals probably go defense if they don't go O-line. I think the Giants could go O-line or defense. So once you start to whittle away the teams that aren't going defense, you focus in on them. You make some calls. You always answer when the phone rings. And maybe you strike a deal, and maybe it's a win-win. Maybe there's more draft equity, which is what I want, because I don't love Bailey and I don't love Reese.
The traditional pick here for the Jets would be to take Bailey because he is the pure edge rusher. That's the positional value. While some scouts believe that Arvell Reese has a higher ceiling than Bailey, he's kind of a hybrid player. He's the off-ball linebacker. He can be an edge rusher. So there's a little bit more projection, and teams get a little skittish when they're projecting in the top 5, especially. You want the safest guy in the top 5 as possible, if there is such a thing. And so if the Jets want to play it really safe, probably David Bailey would be the pick. If they want to get creative, imaginative with their scheme, and bring in a really versatile guy who I think would be the better pick, then it would be Arvell Reese.
Totally agree. Rich Cimini, Brandon Tierney, Jake Asman with you. Episode number 3 of the Jets Collective, presented by PrizePicks. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're nearing 3,000 subscribers already by our 3rd episode. So big thank you to everyone who has tuned into the show. Again, the show's available in audio form as well on Spotify, Apple, and iHeart Podcasts. Rich, I agree with you on Arvell Reese. I'm curious, do you think part of the Jets' thought process here is the head coach is on the hot seat? He needs to show results in his 2nd year. And if Bailey's further along as a pass rusher than Reese, it's maybe an easier sell to ownership to say, hey, we got a guy at number 2 who showed a lot as a rookie, had maybe 10 sacks. Like, is the safer pick, is that thought process also part of the job security if they go with the David Bailey selection? Because I like David Bailey. If they think he's the best player, take him. What I don't want is the Jets basing a decision based on who's the best player for 2026. I want the guy who's the best player for the next 5+ years.
Yeah, I totally hear that. Look, if it's Bailey or it's Reese, they're both going to play a lot as rookies. I mean, they are going to be on the field a lot. Bailey probably more so on 3rd downs, and then they'll work him into the rotation. You draft a guy 2nd, he's going to be on the field a lot. So I don't know if your win now plus this win later theory applies in this case. Now, if there were a quarterback involved, I would say then you get into that whole, do we build for the future or do we take the win now player? I don't think that applies here because no matter who they pick, this guy's going to be playing a whole lot of football. If there were just say, for example, it's not accurate, but just say Ty Simpson was a factor in the top 5, then you're talking about a guy who's probably going to sit on the bench for a year. That's a completely different argument with a coach who's got to win now. Then I could see Aaron Glenn getting on the table and say, no, I want a defensive player. I don't want a quarterback. I want a guy who can help me now. But I don't think that's the case here.
I think you guys make a good point, too, when you talk about, it's got to be about, downstream, big picture. Yeah, whomever they take, we love to see him get 3.5 sacks in week 3 against whomever, or have this disruptive, bone-crushing blindside hit that gives the Jets a short field and they punch it in on the run and they beat whomever in week 7. What I'm really looking at in 3 and 5 years from now, which one of these two dudes can be making that play in the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship? Like, that's how you've got to structure this. I don't know, man. I'll tell you, though, we all love the draft. Everybody loves the draft. Even the other teams, when you're not drafting, the draft is just amazing theater. But I'm going to use the word galvanized. I think the Jets have a plan. I think they're exhausting every option. I think that they've got a chance to get more capital or hit a home run maybe if they hit the right guy early. And it just seems like it's not a Band-Aid and glue and spit. All right, let's do this and get this, a couple of veterans to go 9-8 and shut people up. It's to let's build this the right way for sustainability and for ultimately what we all want and what most of us have never seen, and that's a Super Bowl appearance and Super Bowl win.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, it'd be nice, man. I'm waiting, dude. Come on.
Yeah, Darren Muji strikes me as a very disciplined guy. I think he's got a plan. I think he's trying to stick to it. That's why I don't think they will take the quarterback at 16 or 33, because I think he's got a long-term plan. Now, to be the cynical guy for a second, guys, we've seen this before. Joe Douglas had a really good plan too, and it looked for a minute like it might work. But the problem was what? He missed on the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the plan got blown up to smithereens because he couldn't find the right quarterback. And so all plans hinge around finding the quarterback.
Can I throw a little firecracker in the middle of the room? Jake, I want you to take this first. Ready? So, hey, we're talking about doing this and doing that. Dexter Lawrence said he wants out. And I know that they've addressed the middle of their defensive line. They've got some run stuffers, obviously the trade with the Titans. But why not, at the very least, an exploratory, and I do think he's going to stay with the Giants, but exploratory kick the tire on the Giants and Dexter Lawrence. Why not? He's a stud.
Last week it was A.J. Brown. Now it's Dexter Lawrence. This one's a little more realistic, BT. Look, what are you giving up for Dexter Lawrence would be my first question. I don't think I want to trade the 16th overall pick. You have 2 second-round picks, but do you want to invest in a guy who's 29, who wants a new contract, who's coming off a bad year? There's some questions about, his work ethic. He doesn't sound like an Aaron Glenn guy. I don't know how much sway Glenn would have if Muji really wanted him, Rich, but I'd be surprised if the Jets were in on a guy like Dexter Lawrence after they just traded away Quinn. And I would think they would not want that type of player after they just made the deal at the deadline last season.
BT likes throwing those firecrackers in there.
Got to keep everybody on their toes.
I agree with Jake on that one. You're talking about a 29-year-old nose tackle who's, a large man who's making a lot of money. They had their Dexter Lawrence. It was Quinnen Williams, and they traded him away. They got Devontae Sweat. Let's not forget about him. They think highly of him. He's a younger. I'm not going to say he's Dexter Lawrence. Obviously, I mean, maybe size-wise he is, but that's about where the similarities end right now. But they think he's got a lot of upside. That's their big man in the middle. That's their wide body in this 3-4 defense. They still have Harrison Phillips. They have Jawan Briggs on the nose. And so I think that is a position where they're okay.
All right, maybe a more plausible question. All right, so admittedly a Hail Mary. Just want to throw it out there. We move on. And I probably agree with you guys. And
Patrick Mahomes next week. How can the Jets
hey,
get him?
As long as the ACL's okay, I'll give up anything for him. Rich, do you think there's on any level, because I think we would all agree that Muji won the big trade, Sauce and Q. Do you think any GMs around football, they're saying, man, I know the Jets suck, but I don't know if I want to deal with this cat because he has shown a very good acumen and propensity to win trades. You think that's kind of circulating the NFL a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. I think teams just look for value. I mean, I don't think the Colts are regretting the deal yet with Sauce. I mean, now granted, they had a collapse at the end of the year. It wasn't Sauce's fault. Sauce got hurt. Of course, it was Daniel Jones getting hurt that caused that collapse. And I don't think the Colts are ready to write off and say, God, we got ripped off on that trade. And I know from talking to Brian Schottenheimer at the owners' meetings a couple of weeks ago, I ran into him in the hallway. He loves Quinnen Williams. I mean, he just sees like so much upside with Quinnen Williams. So no, I don't think GMs are like, beware of Muji. This guy's a really good trader.
Comments, questions, and for the first time, super chats will be allowed on the show. I sent the first ever super chat saying super chats are live to the live audience, so we will save those and do a little Q&A at the end. If you guys have questions, super chat those in, and we promise we will definitely get to those. Just getting back a little more to the Bailey Reese conversation, Rich, how involved do you think, not just Aaron Glenn, but a guy like Carl Dunbar, how involved do you think the D-line coach will be? Because if you're talking about a guy like Reese, he's more of a projection than Bailey, as we covered. So, like, from everything you've heard and just knowing Carl Dunbar during his last tenure with the Jets, how involved is he in this decision on Bailey versus Reese?
Well, all the position coaches, not just Carl Dunbar, have some say. You know, they'll get a chance to evaluate, you know, give their evaluations in the draft meetings. And so it's kind of a democracy. I mean, everyone has a voice. Obviously, some voices carry more weight than others. So I don't know if Carl Dunbar is going to tip the scales in the favor of one guy or the other. They will certainly consider his opinion. He's been a guy who's been around the league for a while, who's coached some really good front seven players on the defensive line. But yeah, they'll listen to him, just like they're going to listen to Frank Reich talk about wide receivers and quarterbacks and right on down the line. But this is ultimately going to come down to, you know, to Muji and Glenn and Robbie Payton, the personnel director, and, you know, collaborating to try to put together a draft board.
I got to go back to something I've said for a while here. And listen, I don't really want the Jets to draft Bailey. You guys know I want them to make a trade if there's a good trade to be made. I don't really want them to take Reese, right? But I don't, and I know that I'm alone on this again. I think we fundamentally disagree. All right, you can't take Caleb Downs at 2. Why not? You can't take Sonny Styles at 2. Why? Who says like this conventional, running back can't go here? I want a guy who, when he's running out of that tunnel, provided he stays healthy, knock on wood, it's a fierce sport. Guys go down like flies. But if he can stay healthy, he's going to have a chance to be an all-pro and win a lot of games. I don't want a B- player. I want an A player. So to me, whether it's 2, 8, 9, 12, 18, or 20, I don't really give a rat's behind where we take them. Why aren't you guys with me on that? I don't get it.
You know, let me just throw this in. It's a great point. I just wrote a story for ESPN.com. It's going to be coming out on that very subject. And Aaron Glenn's philosophy is, if you love a guy, go get the guy. No matter what, I'm just relaying what he said.
Nice.
You know, no matter what position, regardless of positional value. And he learned that lesson from Sean Payton in New Orleans, and they carried that over. You know, Dan Campbell carried it to Detroit. Detroit was it 2023? They draft Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, a running back, not, you know, like non-value position. And then they draft an off-ball linebacker. They draft Campbell at 18, and they got ripped. I mean, all the so-called draft experts were ripping the Lions. They give them an F, give them a D. What happens? Those two guys turn out to be really good players for them. Gibbs might be one of the 2 or 3 best running backs in the league. And so I hear where you're coming from, BT. You could make that argument. It goes against the grain a little bit. There's a difference between taking a guy at 18, an off-ball linebacker, and taking him at 2. I mean, that's a big difference there. Yeah. But in a draft where there's not a lot of great positional value at the top, and you have guys like Styles and Love and Downs, it's an interesting thought. I got to give you, good credit there. It's a good thought.
I don't hate what you're saying, BT. I just think there's certain positions where I need to understand and look at positional value as a major factor. Like Jeremiah Love is probably going to be a very, very good running back. I don't think it makes sense for the Jets at 2. We just went through this with Saquon and the Giants in the same spot. But if they took Sonny Styles at 2, Rich, I'm telling you, there's not a single Jet fan that I think would be upset. I think he's the guy that the fan base really loves. And there's a lot of fans who would love them just to say, look, we need a wide receiver. Just take Carnell Tate at 2 and let's get a defensive player at 16. Or maybe we move up for a defensive player, and it's easier to go that way if you want to go offense at 2. I just think people aren't in love with Reese or Bailey, and if they took Styles or Tate, there'd be a lot of Jet fans who'd be totally fine with that.
Reese and Bailey are good players. I don't know why BT's so down on Bailey. I mean, he's a good player, but Carnell Tate would be a mistake at 2. I mean, he's just not, and I've talked to a bunch of scouts, he's just not worth the second pick in the draft. To me, that would be a major reach. He is a wide receiver who wasn't even the best receiver on his team. He ran a tick slow at the combine, and, you know, I just wouldn't pick a guy like that at number 2. Sonny Styles, could you make a case for him? He could be more than an off-ball linebacker. Some people think he could line up, you know, and be a third down rusher off the edge. He's so versatile and so athletic. Maybe you could justify it there. So would not take the receiver at 2. Styles, I think I would have him in my conversation.
Just real quick, Rich, think about this, right? So you and I are married, right? You know, you go on a couple of dates with your wife, you know, you want to love her. And when you find out that you love her, that's when you eventually get on a knee and you propose to her. I want to love somebody at 2. I don't dislike Bailey. I just don't love him. That's all. I would love him at 10, 12. All right, I could justify that. I need a dude at number 2 who's walking in and is changing everything. And I just don't think that Bailey's that guy. Matter of fact, we were talking off air about this. You watched the film against Utah. You watched him go against a guy who's going to go in the top 5, certainly top 10 of the NFL draft. And he didn't do that well. Admittedly, he said, I didn't play well. And you also said that, and I believe this too, he's kind of a one-trick pony. I think you used the word linear. So if he's got one speed, I mean, I'm not racing up to writing on a placard that I need David Bailey at number 2, because I don't. But can you expand on the tape that you watched with him?
Yeah, I watched him against Spencer Fano, the right tackle from Utah, who's going to be a really high draft pick. And I said, let me look at this tape because this is going to be interesting. I think they went 13 times head-to-head, one-on-one. I think he had 2 pressures and 1 quarterback hit. And when he was asked about that game at the scouting combine in late February, he said, that was not one of my better games. I'm talking about Bailey. So he admitted that against top flight competition, he didn't have his best game. And, but he did have 14.5 sacks. He did have the highest pressure percentage in the FBS. He does have the highest career pressure percentage of any player in the last 10 years. And I know the Jets put a lot of weight on analytics in the draft process. So I know that counts for something. And so all that stuff is true. But what you said is also true. I just don't think it's a great draft at the top for super blue chip talent. You don't have those guys in this year's draft. You will next year. You don't have it this year.
Send in any questions you have for Rich, BT, or myself, or a comment. We'll make sure we read them. Super chats will definitely be read. If you're just joining us, it's episode 3 of the Jets Collective, a brand new weekly Jets podcast. We are presented by PrizePicks. Download that PrizePicks app. Use code HMA, and if you put in $5, you'll get $50 instantly in lineups. You know, Rich, I want to just follow up on the whole position value conversation that we're having here in terms of just how scouts see this draft class, because I know you're constantly talking with scouts. It feels like from the outside looking in, it's a down year. Is that the feel you're getting when you talk with people around the league, scouts, that this is not as talented of a draft class as we've seen in recent years?
Well, it depends on the position. Like it's deep. Like wide receivers, you can get wide receivers. Like the second round is going to have a lot of wide receivers go. So you could find guys a little lower down in wide receiver. I think edge-wise, there's some good edge players that you could probably find in the first or second round. Someone gave me a couple of sleepers that the Jets might be interested in. I'm looking on my pad here to see if I could find them. And it depends. It really depends on the position. It just so happens that this year at the top, you have the quote the non-value positions like the running back, the off-ball linebacker, the safety, and then you got Reese, who's in his own category because he's a hybrid. He's kind of a linebacker who can play edge rush. So that's what makes this draft a little unconventional.
We need the sleepers. That's gonna go everywhere. The Cimini sleepers for the New York Jets.
It's a new segment. I like it.
Malachi Lawrence from Central Florida, edge rusher. Someone gave me a little tip on him. 6'4", 260. The kid from Illinois, edge rusher Gabe Jackas, another sleeper who might be like a second or third rounder, and the cornerback, who I find very interesting. And I do think the Jets will draft a cornerback. I don't know. I doubt in the first round, but Chris Johnson from San Diego State is a really, really good player who might be like a high 2 or somewhere in the second round, who's a good player. San Diego State, I'm not saying it's a factor, but that's also where Darren Muji went to school. So you never know about that. But those are my 3 sleepers to keep an eye on for the Jets.
We all know the receivers. We know, every year, a couple of tight ends. Bowers, obviously this year, the stud who just went nuts at the combine. We know Mendoza's the big quarterback. Just a hypothetical. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. I'm just curious to help give our audience a sense of how strong the O-line is. If in terms of the draft prospects, if the Jets' offensive line was awful, right, and they had the number 2 pick, would we be talking about taking one of those top 2 O-line prospects or no?
Mauanoa for sure for the Miami.
At number 2.
Yeah, I mean, or okay. Spencer Fino. Yeah, I mean, we could. I mean, they would if they were in that market, but it's like the one position they don't need. But
no, I know. I was just
interior
curious.
Line though, for sure. I mean, look. There's nothing that's written anywhere that they can't draft a center. I mean, just because they signed Josh Myers to a modest contract extension doesn't mean they can't draft a center in the 2nd or the 4th round or something like that. And the same goes to guard. So, yeah, don't rule out an interior lineman, but I'd be very, very surprised if they took a tackle at any point.
What's interesting is if the Penn State guard Vega Iwani is I definitely botched his name, but he's been mocked at times to the Jets at 16. The Emmanuel Pignon from Oregon's a guy who's a late first, maybe early second. He could be in play at 33 for the Jets if they don't trade that pick. What would they do with Joe Tippmann in that scenario, though, right? Because if they drafted an interior offensive lineman, Rich, is Tippmann sliding back to center and Myers then, of course, is the odd guy out with Parham and the rookie? Like, the fact that Tippmann can be a guard or a center does allow them to truly go BPA at that interior line position if there's someone they like.
It does. In my own personal opinion, I think it would be overkill to take an interior lineman at 16. Yeah. The Jets have invested more draft capital in the offensive line than any team in the league over the last few years. I mean, how many number 1 picks have they gone in the offensive line? What is it, 4? And then Tippmann in the 2nd round. So I think that would be overkill. I think Tippmann wants to stay at guard. That's the impression I get. I think he really wants to be a guard. So if their draft board falls apart and all those receivers are gone and Kenyon Sadiq is gone at 16 and you're sitting there with like, okay, what do we do now? Do we trade down or do we take, the Penn State kid? Maybe they would then, but I don't think it's a high priority.
Rich, you brought up Sadiq. I think it was either the first or obviously we've only done a couple of shows, so it was one of the first 2 shows here. And the more I thought about that, obviously I watched him at Oregon. I watched the combine. It's just ridiculous what he did. Insane. Big, strong, fast, explosive, a lot of catches, touchdowns, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, whenever they do get their young quarterback down the road, a great safety valve for the development of a young quarterback. But do you think that both of you guys, you think there's a chance where if one of the receivers that they really like is not there at 16 and they're not going to go Ty Simpson just for the sake of continuing the conversation, they're not in on Simpson at all at 16, do you think that they would make a move to maybe move up 2 or 3 slots to get the tight end? Can you see them doing that?
Rich, go ahead. Could they be that aggressive for a tight end? I was going to say maybe a receiver they could move up, but I got a proposed trade for you guys. But tight end would surprise me if they traded up because I think he might be there at 16 and you don't have to move at all.
Yeah, so since we last talked last week, I think the intel I've been getting on Kenyon Sadiq is he is not going to be there at 16.
That's why I asked.
I think Kansas City, I think, has the 9th pick or yes, right around there. So
they're 9.
I think the window opens for him right there. So like between 9 and I'd be very surprised if he got down to the Jets at 16.
Really?
Now you bring up a very, very interesting point about could they trade up to get one of those receivers? I have heard a little buzz, around the league that if there's a receiver who's kind of hovering, one of those big 3 receivers, then I think it's feasible that the Jets could make a move up to grab one of those guys.
Yeah, we got a little Cimini buzz here, Jake. Let's go.
All right, so here's the trade that I've been talking about on my own YouTube channel. I look at the Washington Commanders at 7. They do not have a 2nd-round pick. They don't have a 4th-round pick. If you take 16 and 44, the Jets' 16th overall pick, and the Cowboys' 2nd-rounder they got in the Quinnen deal, which is 44, on the point value chart, that gets you into that 7 or 8 range. If the Jets offered that to Washington, I don't know what their plans are, who they're eyeing at 7, but I wonder if the Jets, let's say they love Carnell Tate and he's there, or McKillum and whoever, Jordan Tyson, whoever their guy is, that feels like a trade that could actually happen based on that little nugget that you just dropped, Rich.
Yeah, I mean I mean, you got to love the guy, obviously, to give up a second round pick and then your own pick to move up. But if they love one of the, I think Tate is probably, this is just an educated guess, probably the top guy on the Jet board in terms of wide receivers. Jordan Tyson has that big private workout coming up in about a week where it's going to be like he's going to do some positional drills. You know, he's a really, really talented player and a baller too. He's got a good attitude. It's just the freaking injuries. You know, the guy's always hurt. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. Mekhi Lemon did come in for a 30 visit with the Jets, and I think they wanted to check him out a little bit. There was some rumors at the combine that he didn't interview well. So, but yeah, Jake, I mean, I sure, why not? I could see something like that happening.
I don't think I'd do it. And it's a really interesting thought, Jake. I'm not trying to shoot it down. I love the creativity. But to me, I would be more inclined, rather than going 16-44 and scooting up to 7, I would almost rather take 16-44 and maybe slide backwards and accrue some more capital and, you know, take some more swings that way, rather than putting all my eggs in one basket for a receiver with a torn ACL, the torn PCL, a torn MCL, a hamstring issue last year. Immensely gifted, and Rich is right. He is a baller. There's no concerns. He is all about football. He knows the grease board, but he's been banged up a lot. And if it's not him, the other guys, I wouldn't do it, but it's something fun to talk about.
I think I'd only do it for Tate because I just think he's the perfect complement size-wise, how he plays to what they have in Garrett Wilson. I love Mekhi Lemon. He's my personal favorite receiver, but he might just be a slot guy, and I don't know if you're trading up for that type of player. The one thing I'll add, though, BT, because I like you. I like Darren Muji. I don't know if I'm as high on him as you seem to be, but I do think
high,
he's smart.
I'm edible high at this point on Darren Muji. I got five edibles on Muji. I'm high on Muji, baby.
I hope you're right, because God, do we deserve it as Jet fans. But the thing I would say is, well, what if they traded up? And I think I maybe mentioned this to you guys last week. Pick 33 is one of the most traded picks in the draft. 2 of the last 3 years, we've seen that pick be traded to a different team. If they traded up with 16-44, what if Muji trades out of 33? They don't have a third-round pick. All of a sudden, you get something. You could kind of recoup what you just gave up to facilitate that trade up. So I think when the Jets have this many picks and you have a smart GM who's made all these trades, you could kind of think bold and be creative with the different ways you want to attack this draft next week.
Plausible. That's a good retort. It's a good volley back. But isn't that what makes this so interesting? Like, all right, again, until he finds his quarterback, he's never going to get a grade A, talking about Muji. But he's shown an early acumen, an early zest for big deals, even within the margins, which we've talked about a million times sideways. So we don't have to get in chapter and verse on that now. But all the little checkpoints that you, up until you get the quarterback, of evaluation for Muji are very promising. The Jets are fiscally healthy right now in terms of cap space, effective cap space, draft capital. I mean, a young GM who looks the part early on. Like, honestly, and I'm not a Jets homer. Like, anybody new to this show, Jake, you are, wildly passionate like me. Maybe some people say you slant a little more negatively than me, and that's not a bad thing. That's just some people's take. But I just destroy the Jets like anybody when they deserve it, which is a lot. But I do feel optimism, and I do feel hope about the direction of this regime. It's not manufactured, contrived enthusiasm. I'm genuinely feeling pretty good about the Jets right now, as crazy as that sounds.
It's a weird feeling I have, Rich, because I feel really good about the general manager. I have very little faith in the head coach after what we watched in his first year. So I wonder how it ultimately plays out, because I do like a lot of what Muji has done, but then like the thing hovering over the franchise is the fact that the head coach is ultimately the biggest key to success. Head coach and quarterback is what ultimately wins in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think, spending time with Aaron Glenn at the owners' meetings, I think we talked about last time.
Were you in a hot tub with Aaron Glenn?
No. I was not in a hot tub. You saw me. I was sitting right next to him at the breakfast meeting. I think he was humbled a little bit by last year, and I think he recognizes his mistakes, and I think he's trying hard to fix them. I mean, he wiped out most of his coaching staff, which is basically admitting that he hired a poor staff the first time around. I like the Frank Reich hire. I like the fact that Glenn is going to run the defense himself. And so I think he's taking steps to try to improve it. He said he's spending a lot of time working on clock management, game management issues. In the end, to use one of Rex Ryan's favorite sayings, the proof will be in the pudding. So we'll find out on week 1, week 2, and whether this all is just talk or BS or it's real if he's a better coach.
What does it look like when he's working on clock scenario? Like, is he just playing Madden with like his kids or whatnot? Like, how do you work on like clock management scenarios in the offseason?
I was kind of thinking the same thing.
They have the guy, John Berger, who's their clock manager and expert. He was with the Giants for a long time. And I'm sure they're going over scenarios. They study tape from around the league, different teams, how they handle certain situations. And I mean, he's probably not doing that right now because it's such a draft focus. But once they get through the OTAs and the mini camp, I know last year he spent a lot of time in the month of June and July on his own. Aaron Glenn even actually goes around and visits coaches during the downtime. He goes to see Al Groh up in the Boston area. It's one of his mentors. Every summer he takes a special trip to go visit Al. They sit down, they get on the whiteboard, they go through stuff, they go through clock management, all sorts of X's and O's, and he does that with other coaches as well. So he's putting the effort in. Now you just have to see the results.
He's got to find his version of what? Dick Curl, right? That's what he's got to do. Remember that? Herm's old guy, Dick
I'm impressed that you remember Dick Curl. We called him Grandfather Clock. So
how could you forget the name Dick Curl, Rich? I mean, come on.
This is true. This is true.
Right in the jokes itself. I got to push back a little bit, Rich. I don't need to belabor this, but you say that you think that Glenn's been humbled, and you might be right. And I do believe that he's a leader of men. But that superpowers comment about Colvin, that doesn't sound like a guy who's been humbled to me.
He believes it. I mean, he so what? We'll find out. He does make some comments that sometimes you roll your eye. I mean, the promised land quote about Geno, we talked about it in depth last week. That was probably not the best choice of words. And so, it's easy to say stuff now and not say stuff and say you're going to do this and that. It's pretty stress-free right now. When things heat up and the bullets start flying in September, that's where the cream rises, and then we'll find out if he's the real deal.
A listener of ours made the Geno Smith Promised Land graphic for us. If we launch a merch line, there you go. Our first ever Promised Land tee coming to the Jets Collective.
If he's holding tablets, good enough for me. I'm sold.
Send in any super chats you have, some questions, comments, like the big fella who writes in Sonny Styles at 2, speak it into existence. We'll get to all those coming up. We hit on Sonny Styles earlier, but we are presented by PrizePicks. Here's what you need to do to support our show and to support our presenting sponsor, PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app. You can play $5, and you're going to get $50 instantly in lineups as bonus bets. Starting next week, we're going to show you some of the Jets future bets that you could place over at PrizePicks. They got futures on Garrett Wilson and his yards and his touchdowns. We'll cover some of that. And more importantly, with the draft, we'll go through our draft lineups with PrizePicks. But again, it's a lot of fun. It is the best daily fantasy app out there. You can cash out early if your picks are going crazy and you're winning. You can always mix multiple sports in one lineup. I benefited from the fact that there were no runs scored in the first inning. Aaron Judge struck out once. That was a prize pick that I was able to win with, and was
wait, you bet you bet against the Yankees? You bet for Judge to strike out? You bet against the Yankees? You're a Yankee fan, Jake.
All I needed, BT, was a Judge strikeout, a Stanton strikeout, and no runs in the first day. This is on PrizePicks earlier today, and what happened was 2 of the 3 hit, but PrizePicks gives you a flex play option, so 2 out of 3 you actually win money. So there's cool things like that.
Nice.
I wanted to try it out on my personal channel. PrizePicks always has really cool options for all sports, but there was the baseball one for you. I wasn't happy they struck out, but I'm like, if you're gonna make it out, can it at least be a K so I can win some
money? Yeah,
that's right.
I'm with you.
Rich, you brought this topic to the table before our show tonight. Our favorite and least favorite Jets draft picks of all time. I mean, BT and I could go for hours, I'm sure, on this.
Almighty.
But I'll start with you, Rich, because it was your topic. And how do you want to answer? Is it your favorite Jet draft picks that you covered, or least favorite that you covered? What were you envisioning when you suggested this as a topic?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we could go on and on about mostly our least favorite, but maybe mine would be different from yours because I'm looking at it from a different perspective. But I was just curious to hear what you guys would have to say. Some of the picks in Jet history that cause you the most angst. That's what I was trying, and some of the ones where you just feel so good about. That's what I was trying to when I was texting that earlier today. So like, come on, give me a couple of your all-time favorites.
This is easy. Well, I got to get a couple bad ones off the table first here. I mean, Vernon Golston, I mean, come up and collect your prize. I mean, you're the worst in the history of the franchise. Nobody worse than you from a non-quarterback perspective. I'm going to surprise you with one. And if this gets to him, it's no disrespect. I actually liked him. But Keyshawn, believe it or not, as the number 1 pick in 96, and not because he wasn't good, although he wasn't as fast as people thought. It was a little bit of a misread. He was gone after 4 years traded, all that stuff. But the nonsense that he pulled my boy Krebet into, I didn't appreciate that. I was a number 80 guy. And then they eventually dealt him, you know, and there were some good years. They won the AFC East in 98 with Keyshawn when they went 12-4. But I didn't love the Keyshawn pick first overall in 96, Jake. I got to be honest with you.
That surprises me because, I mean, the playoff performance against the Jaguars in 98.
I was at that game.
Yeah. He had an interception that game too, by the way.
Yeah.
They put it. You know. Yep.
That surprises me. My favorite Jet draft pick of all time is the late great Nick Mangold, because there was no one that embodied being a Jet like Nick Mangold did, and I think, I mean, Rich, you could talk more to this given your role with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think he was a Hall of Fame center. I mean, I will vividly remember like his career, everything that he meant to the organization. But honestly, one of the moments I think about with Mangold and his value, there was a game the Jets played in 2011 against the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. And I think Colin Baxter, some career backup, had to start at center that night because Mangold was dealing with very serious ankle sprain. You might remember the injury, Rich, but he was unavailable to play. And this guy was like an Iron Man. And the Jets had no idea what they were doing that night. Sanchez had no idea how to adjust any of the protections. You just really saw how valuable Nick Mangold was in that game. So I just wanted to shout him out because obviously it's been a horrible, horrible year for, the Jet fan base, and losing Nick Mangold was one of the worst parts of that. So to me, one of my favorite Jets of all time. And if I can only single out one Jet draft pick, I'm going with Mangold.
That's a good call.
They took Mangold with the pick they got in the John Abraham trade. And with Atlanta, and it was a 3-way trade with Denver. And as soon as Mike Tannenbaum made that pick, he got a text from Ozzie Newsome with the Ravens, and Ozzie was calling to congratulate Mike. He said, "Man, that was an awesome pick." And Mike was a young GM at the time. It was his first draft, and I know it meant the world to him to hear a guy like a Hall of Famer like Ozzie Smith say, "Hey, man, you nailed that pick."
Wow.
I think so that I know that meant a lot to Mike Tannenbaum. I think my 2 favorite picks, and again, different reasons. I think getting, the Revis pick in 2007, obviously, one of the best ever cornerbacks ever, a Hall of Famer. But just the fact that they identified him and they traded up, I think they went up from like 20-something to 14. They made a big move up to get him. So to me, it showed like they had a plan. Like they knew this guy was going to be great, and they went and got him. And he was. So that was one. And the other one, for a totally different reason, Lavernius Coles, 3rd rounder in 2000. He was kind of the bad boy of that draft. And you guys, I don't know, Jake, it might be a little before your time, but BT knows. He got in a little trouble at Florida State. It got blown way out of proportion. His friend Peter Warwick got drafted 4th overall, and Lavernius paid the price. He got thrown off the team at Florida State. He drops all the way to the 3rd round, even though he had 1st-round talent. And the guy, like the no-name guy who was instrumental in the decision to draft him was the Jets security director, Steve Yarnell, who was this guy who really didn't have much of a personality. He was like this steely-eyed former FBI guy. And as legend has it, it's not even legend, it happened. He got in a heated draft room debate with Parcells, because Parcells was pushing back on Lavernius Coles, and Yarnell had vetted him, had gone down to Florida, investigated it, and came back to Parcells and said, "This guy is good." And Parcells says, "If he's not good, it's your job." And Mike Tannenbaum told me this story. He said, "I'm standing there watching these 2 guys go back and forth." He goes, "My jaw dropped." And Parcells listened to Yarnell. They drafted him. He turned out to be an outstanding player in the league, not only for the Jets, for other teams. And now the ironic part about it is that Lavernius is in law enforcement himself as a cop down in Jacksonville. I spoke to him a few months ago for a story. I think that's a really cool story, and that's one of my favorite draft picks.
I'm pretty sure that story's pinned to the top of your X account, right, about Lavernius?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's been there for
Everyone go check it out.
Yeah, it's awesome. I read it, by the way. It's great. I
Me
thought,
too.
didn't he steal something from a department store, Dillard's?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Well, he didn't
That's what it
steal it.
was.
He got basically like a 95% discount
Wow, good for
at a
him.
clothing store down in Tallahassee, Florida, and it was, and they got a few $100s worth of stuff. They probably paid $10.
I
And
got you.
so
I got you.
Warwick was the Heisman candidate, and
Yep.
nothing happened to him. Lavernius got tossed out, and his career looked like it was in shambles for a minute. The Jets took him, turned out to be a great draft pick, and he's made $40 million in the NFL, and now he's a police officer. I think he's had a great story.
I got one quick one for you. I'm forgetting the round. I want to say third or fourth round, Rich. And it's not a superstar, but I loved him as a player. Ray Mickens. I loved Ray Mickens, right? And so obviously Parcells' first year is 97, coming off the 1-15 and then the 3-13 disaster before that. Jets go 9-7. They destroyed Seattle that first week. As you know, up in the Kingdom, they scored 40-something points. But midway through the season, I didn't really know, like, they're going to be good. Like, is this for real? And they wound up going 9-7 and just missed the playoffs. But you probably remember the game, Rich. He blocked a punt against the Raiders at the old Meadowlands, man. It was, I don't know if he scooped it up, but he blocked it. Somebody scooped it up. They ran it in for a touchdown. I was at the game. And I always thought Ray Mickens, for a little guy, had great swag. And I believe he played at A&M with Aaron, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Great tenacity, good IQ, big Ray Mickens fan.
Really good football, just a football player. He played a long time in the NFL.
Yeah.
Smart guy, great nickel back, very good friends with Aaron Glenn to this day, and a really good guy, enormously successful businessman down in Texas. Ray Mickens has done quite well for himself. And his son, of course, plays in the NFL for the Chargers.
I thought the Jets were going to draft him last year. There was a lot of buzz about that.
Yeah, he turned out to be a good player, too.
You asked about least favorite, so BT gave his. I'll make this short and sweet. It's Zach Wilson, because they're still paying they're still dealing with the effects of missing on that pick. Forget the whole Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl thing, but everything that happened with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, it all stems back from the fact that they missed on the Zach Wilson pick, and like no quarterback played as many games as he did and put up the numbers he did. He's right there with Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell and Johnny Manziel. Like, it's as bad, if you look at the deep analytics for Zach Wilson, as any historic draft bust. I know, Hackenberg never took a snap in the regular season. That's a second-round pick. Like, Zach Wilson was the second pick in the draft. They traded a future Super Bowl winning quarterback to move on from Sam and go with Zach. Anytime I think of brutal Jets draft picks, and there's plenty, so I think BT, you already mentioned Vernon Gholston.
Yeah.
We every Jet fan out there knows about all the bad draft picks, but I just think Zach Wilson, when it's all said and done, he will be the biggest bust in this franchise's history.
D. Milner comes to mind as well, but I think you almost have to look at Zach, because think about this, guys. Not only did the Jets not properly coach him up and insulate him in all those cute football terms, but they just flat out identified the wrong guy, because he went to Miami, couldn't get a sniff. Now he's a third stringer with the Saints. The next stop is he's going to be playing in some minor league football league. Like, he really just is not a good quarterback. He stunk.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of the biggest calamities in Jet history in terms of player procurement. There were people who were telling Joe Douglas in that draft room, "Don't take this guy." They were telling him people wanted him to keep Sam Darnold. Let's keep Darnold. Let's work with him. Let's draft one of these other guys like Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell or Micah Parsons. That was a tremendous draft. And the Jets were like, no, Joe Douglas wanted Zach Wilson, and then they didn't help him at all by basically surrounding him with a crappy supporting cast. But totally one of the top calamities in Jet history.
And here we go, picking number 2 once again. And the 3 other times it did not go well for the Jets. Maybe the 4th time in this case is the charm. Let's get to some super chats before we wrap up our show. Big thank you to everyone who's watching live. Again, help us get to over 3,000 subscribers. We got over 400 plus watching live right now. So thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Rob just sent in a $10 donation. Well, thank you very much, Rob.
What's up,
If you got
Rob?
a question, write it in the chat and we'll put it up on the screen. Derek, the Kansas Jet fan, writes in, how do you guys feel about trading back from 2 and maybe selecting Ruben Bain, and who are the most likely teams who would trade up? Rich, is Ruben Bain a possibility for the Jets and they trade down?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very good player. He's probably going to go in the top 10, highly productive at Miami. You hear about the short arms. That's that's a factor. I mean, when in the scouting process, that is a factor for an edge player. I think if the Jets were able to trade back and get him somewhere in the 6 to 10 range and pick up some extra draft capital, I'd be on board with that. Someone told me that he, much like Bailey, he needs to be out on a wide 9 type system because he's got to build up a little steam before he gets to the quarterback. So maybe they'd have to adjust the scheme a little bit. But I think that would be that wouldn't be a crazy idea.
Well, and I'm with you. And just to add to it, if you look at a trade, and the question was also about trading partners, maybe Commanders 7. I know, Jake, you brought them up earlier. Saints at 8. They need a little defense. Cincinnati needs a world of defense at 10. Couple things to think about. Couple teams.
It's gonna be tough to find someone to come up to 2, but I'm certainly open to it if the Jets could get that opportunity. Kyle Clifton checks in, not to be confused with the former great Jet linebacker.
Loved them. And by the way, real quick, all my buddies in Brooklyn were Giants fans, and they all had number 56. Lawrence, I was the only knucklehead on the street with a number 56, Jets jersey. Kyle Clifton. Pardon me. Lance Bell was 56, but didn't Clifton wear like those armbands, like those big padded white, right? He did, right, Rich? He played special teams too, Kyle.
He was about 59. It was his number.
59, 59.
And he was a tackling machine.
Yes.
He was just all over the field, a tackling machine. One of the nicest guys that you'll ever come across too, but just a really heady player in the middle of the defense.
The Kyle Clifton, who's watching the Jets Collective, wants to know what's a greater possibility: guard in the first 2 rounds or center in the 4th or 5th. I would say guard just because of how the board could play out. But Rich, you might have a better answer to this because I do think a guard is in play at 16. I think a guard could be in play at 33 or 44. I don't think they'd take a center that high, and I'd be surprised if they drafted a center in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, I mean they signed Parham from the Raiders. They gave him $7.5 million guaranteed, so they obviously want to play him. I just don't see them going guard or center on the 1st or 2nd day of the draft. I mean, maybe at 44 if someone's clearly head and shoulders above it, but that's a tough one to answer. I mean, yeah. I guess either one is possible.
I don't want to see it. Even though we don't really know how these players are going to be, it's all projections and guesses and opinions, whatever, to an extent. If I see O-line early, I don't mean at 2, but even at 16, I'm going to flip out. Yeah. You better get me a receiver. You better get me a tight end. Yeah. I don't want it. I will. That's
overkill. That's overkill.
Yes.
Black Gypsy checks in. Frank Reich last year was horrible with the Colts, horrible with the Panthers, horrible at Stanford. Do you guys think he'll be better, and how, if so? I mean, Rich, you said earlier that you liked the Reich hire by Glenn. What's the selling point for skeptical Jet fans like Black Gypsy about Frank Reich?
Well, he wasn't horrible with the Colts. I mean, they did make the playoffs a couple of times, and he had to change quarterbacks every year. So I don't agree with that. He wasn't horrible with the Colts. Carolina was a disaster. He didn't make it through the first year. There was a lot of dysfunction in the organization that was going on there. And he wasn't horrible at Stanford. They didn't have a good record, but the program was in a state of chaos when he was thrown in there at the last second because they had to fire Troy Taylor, by the way, ex-Jet quarterback many moons ago. And so Reich came in and steadied the ship, and I think at least put a respectable product on the field. They didn't have a winning record, but I like the hire. He knows offense. He knows the quarterback position, and I think that's vital for a Jet team that has been in the wilderness for many years regarding quarterback position.
He was an interim coach. Listen. And all I need to know about a college coach is what are you spending on NIL? And I'm going to guess that Stanford's NIL is not like Michigan or Ohio State or LSU or some other powers. So, I mean, I disregard that. You're right. Did some good stuff with the Colts. I don't love the move as much as you do. But I don't know. I don't mean to put words in your mouth. I don't know that you love it, but you certainly like it and you espouse that. But I think that he's stabilizing. My only fear is, and maybe this is wildly off base, I don't know, are his philosophies becoming, and I don't know the answer to this, a little antiquated in the modern NFL, or are they still directly in the middle of what's going on? I don't know.
Well, they didn't use a lot of pre-snap motion in some of his years with the Colts. So some people are saying, he didn't. That's kind of the fad now in the NFL, and maybe he was a little bit behind there. But again, switching quarterbacks every year there made it kind of tough. I thought he did a good job of evolving that offense in Indianapolis. They went from a passing team with Andrew Luck, and they morphed it into a running team when they got Jonathan Taylor, and then he became the focal point of the offense. And I hear, I've been told he has very creative, very good run schemes. And so, look, who are the Jets going to get after last season? After firing their OC 3 weeks after the offseason began, and they're starting, like, who are you going to get? So I thought under the circumstances that was good to get him.
Hey, shout out to Seth Ryan, who Aaron Glenn singled out at the league meeting sitting next to you, Rich. I mean, maybe Seth Ryan as the pass game coordinator could help modernize some of the concepts that Frank has. I thought that was interesting that Glenn gave him a shout out.
He did. And he said that some of these younger coaches on their staff are coming up with interesting ideas. I know for a fact that in Detroit, Seth Ryan was a big help to Ben Johnson, especially with some of the gadget plays they ran. So
nice.
You get a younger type mind and bring them into the room with a Frank Reich, and maybe they have a good complementary situation there.
Couple super chats left. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. I just saw that we're nearing 3,000, 2,830. So we've gained a bunch during this live stream alone. Big thank you to everyone out there who's making the Jets Collective a successful launch through 3 episodes here. Kevin checking in. He goes, big fan, guys. Would you guys take Cooper over Tyson if they're both on the board at 16? Rich, Cooper, I think, is like the safe pick. Tyson is the potentially scary pick because of the injury history. If both are there, I'd be fascinated to see what the Jets would do.
Yeah, that's the ultimate, risk versus safe pick. They do like Cooper, hearings, Omar Cooper, physical receiver, blocks his ass off, an Aaron Glenn type of player, highly productive at Indiana. But Tyson, man, he's got some skills. Me personally, I'd take a chance on Tyson. I don't know if those injuries will carry over. I'm willing to take a little bit of a chance and bet on the upside.
I'm Team Tyson here, but I have seen a couple mocks where Cooper has been mocked to the Jets, just to throw that in.
He does a lot. I mean, I've seen people say that he could go as high as 13 to the Rams. Like, he's an LA Ram type of receiver. I think Daniel Jeremiah was talking about that. So we'll see. I like both players. I guess I'd lean Tyson because you're taking the swing at 16. But, man, the MetLife turf, history of injuries. Like, if he goes to the Ravens, it's a great pick. He goes to the Jets, and I'd be terrified. So, I don't know.
True. It's true.
Life is a Jet fan. Doc Jet fan checks in. Doc is an OG Jet fan. He's been following this team forever. No team has ever drafted a Hall of Famer and then regretted it because it wasn't at a so-called prime position. The Jets need stars. Get the rest via free agency / trade. So, Doc is on board with you, BT.
That is a wise, sage man. I don't know Doc, but Doc is the kind of guy that I could sit down with, have a nice glass of scotch, or maybe open up a good bottle of cab and, talk about the old days. And that is a man that I would connect to. Clearly an intelligent, forward-thinking man, my kind of person, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets just need good football players right now. They get good football players in the building.
Boy Green checking in. Paul got hired by HMA to be doing some socials for the Jets Collective. So shout out to Boy Green for helping us out. And he's already using some money to ask us a question. Ask Rich a question, really.
We even pay him yet? We didn't even pay him yet, man.
Rich, love your Sunday Nuggets column on ESPN every week. Can you walk us through your process of putting that together? And what is the juiciest thing that you've heard?
Well, he's going to have to read Sunday's column to find out the juiciest thing. I actually filed it this afternoon. It's mostly due on Thursdays, so it was sent in today. And not to say that I can't do a little rewrite before Sunday if I hear something, which often happens. But yeah, thank you, Boy Green, for reading it. A lot of time and effort goes into that, and some weeks they're better than others. And it just depends on the information you have. Sometimes you get lucky some weeks, and some weeks you don't.
But, Rich, what about the process? Because I think that's an outstanding question. So, we all, obviously, Jake and I do talk shows every day, and you obviously guest a lot. You write basically all the time. So we all go into our different endeavors, like watching a game and then seeing it kind of come to life in our minds and how we're going to present it verbally or through a keyboard. But what is your actual process? I know you could rewrite and change things, but how does that work? Because that Sunday Nugget thing is that's a tricky thing. You're navigating a lot of different stuff. How do you actually do it logistically?
Yeah, I mean, I do it throughout the week. I don't save it for the last minute. I kind of write it as it goes along. I just jot down ideas as the weeks. Sometimes even for next week, I have ideas already. I'll jot it down and things I want to, explore people I want to talk to. So during the course of a week, I usually check in with, a group of people around the league. And if I hear an interesting nugget, I'll just jot it down and save it for the notes column. Or sometimes it grows bigger than the notes column. It could become a bigger story. A lot of times I'll say to my editor, "Oh, I want to use this as the first item in my notebook." And he goes, No, we want to make that bigger. So let's save that for another day where we could blow it out into a full story. So that happens sometimes as well. So I have an interest. You talked about Keyshawn before, BT.
Yeah.
I do have a Keyshawn story coming up in the next few days about the process. He's the last receiver to go number 1 overall. And and I'm not sure it's ever going to happen again. It's been 30 years since he was. So I did a story talking to him and a lot of other people about the receiver position and whether we will ever see a number 1 receiver ever again, or was Keyshawn the last one? And was he a good pick? And what went into that pick? They passed on a Hall of Famer, Jonathan Ogden, in that draft. So I get into all that stuff in a story that should be coming out early next week.
Nice.
Love
Can't
that.
wait to read. That's good.
That's awesome. And I mean, Rich, I can speak as a fan and just like getting to know you over the years. Like my Sundays, like it's part of the Sunday routine to read that news and notes column that you put together every week. So I am certainly looking forward to reading this week's column and that story on Keyshawn. How about this from Mimosa? A $50 super chat. Big time from Mimosa.
Wow.
Hi, Jake, BT, and Rich. Love the show. Mimosa, we love you. I want players who can impact the game and keep me from having to wear a brown bag over my head by week 5. So Mimosa's a regular on my YouTube channel. She got into a fight with a Dallas Cowboys fan at the Jets-Cowboys game this year. She said the Cowboys fans were the most obnoxious, brutal fans she's dealt with. She goes to a bunch of games every year. So I'm with you, Mimosa. I think we, as Jet fans and Rich is covering this team, would like to watch exciting football and actually see this team not get their doors blown off like they were this past year. And I think this goes back to the conversation we were having about the need for weapons. Like receivers get fans excited. We were just talking about Keyshawn. An offensive lineman, sure, it could be a nice pick, but we've seen that. The Jets need to get playmakers next to Garrett Wilson.
They do. By the way, that's an incredibly generous super chat. Thank you very much, Mimosa. Awesome. I hear you, and I've fallen prey to that forever. Like, even with like Brock Bowers, I'm like, take Brock Bowers. That's intriguing to me because I want points. Like, I want to see the Jets finally get in the end zone. But we all know, even if you have those vertical weapons and guys who can make you miss and have the wiggle and all the other stuff, if you can't protect your quarterback for more than 1 second, it means nothing. So I've learned the hard way. I actually like the way the Jets are building from the inside out as opposed from the outside in. But I think I understand what you're saying. I certainly get it. We all do. It's embarrassing.
The Jets, their decision makers really believe they have a good offensive line. They believe they have a good running back in Breece Hall, who I think they're going to try to sign. They need people who could score the football. They need the dynamic players. They have someone in Garrett Wilson and they have someone in Breece Hall. You need to get 1 or 2 other guys, whether it's a electrifying tight end or another wide receiver. You have to get people who can score the football. That's today's NFL.
Rich, question real quick. You mentioned Breece. We all know, what the deal is with the contract. How's Braylon Allen doing? Do you know anything physically? He's doing pretty well, right? Yeah,
I mean, I've seen video of him running full speed, at the facility. I think he'll be back. I mean, him and Isaiah Davis and Breece Hall, they should have a pretty good backfield.
Good.
Looking forward to that. Doc, by the way, goes, you got it, BT. McAllen 25. Great interview with Stephen A. Smith, by the way.
Yeah, that was on BT Unleashed. You guys got to check it out. It wasn't even an interview, and thank you for that, Doc. It was 2 hours. It was basically a 2-hour conversation, so thank you very much. Steve's the man. I've been friends with him forever.
Will you be part of his presidential cabinet?
It depends how much he's paying. I got to see how this YouTube thing works out down the road. And I got to make sure it's listen, which part is he going? Which way is he going? You couldn't pay me to get involved in politics, man. Unless I was literally destitute. It was my only resort to put food on the table. I want no part of it. And by the way, he ain't running for president. He's not. He wants to get up on that debate stage. He thinks he would do really well. And so do I, by the way. But he's not going to run for president. He's got to give up all that money. He's making $20-something million a year from ESPN. Yeah. He's not giving that up.
Yeah, That's not happening. Chuck Wagon checks in. Wagon's way. We need a kicker. Anybody worth drafting? They do have 2 7th-round picks, I think, Rich. And right now, Cade York is the kicker that they signed in free agency.
I'm not going to lie and pretend I know anything about the kickers in this draft. So, but I will say this: they'll find a veteran. They'll get a veteran. I mean, guys are always shaken free. Nick Folk didn't sign until like the week of it was like the first week of training camp. So I wouldn't push the panic button there yet.
I got to admit, I actually remember coming home from playing golf years ago. I forget the exact 05 or whatever it was. The Jets draft Nugent, and I was actually excited. I'm like, good pick, yeah, those good defense. I actually got excited. It was pretty early in the draft too. The Jets twist me so backwards that I reacted like, and I mean like almost demonstrably over the top. Like I didn't like the pick. I loved it. It was a kicker. Oh, I'm such an idiot with this team. They drive me nuts.
Yeah, that second round.
47th overall. Yeah.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Nope.
Last one here from Ralphie Rocks to close us out. Thoughts on
Ralphie.
trading from 16 by packaging 44 to get into 10 to the 12 range and then trade back from 33 to recoup that pick. Similar scenario to what we discussed earlier. That would be the ultimate, like Darren Muji flexing on people, that his ability to trade. If they trade up and then trade back, I'd feel like I'm watching like Kevin Costner in Draft Day, with with the amount of trades that would take. But they do have the picks to do it. And Muji, he seems like he's that kind of like, modern GM is not afraid to make deals. I think, Rich, you were the one who wrote Tim and Howie Roseman that have made the most trades over the last, calendar year?
Yeah, but then after I said that, the Eagles made 2 more trades. So I think Howie's up on him like 14-12 or something like that. But the one thing I think he won't do is trade picks from the 27 draft, because that's looking like a potentially historic draft. So I'd be surprised if he traded future capital to move up and around this year's draft. But he will move up and around in this year's draft. He'll figure out a way.
Well, you used the term modern GM. I think we're going to see a lot of trades. I think the business of the NFL has really, it's evidently changed. I mean, it's obvious, right? And I think what's happening now is we're not at the beginning stage. We're kind of in the medium stage now, where younger minds and younger decision makers who started obviously very low are now in positions of power. And I know that this is going to sound ridiculous, but they all grew up on Madden. They all grew up playing fantasy sports. They're all used to wheeling and dealing. And that's part of their DNA. That's part of their mindset. So it's no longer the antiquated, no, that's unconventional, we can't do that. Like, I think you're going to see a lot of trades because I think it's changed. I love it.
Totally. Yeah, it's added a different dimension to it. So many more trades. I was talking to a former GM the other day, and he said, like when Keyshawn was drafted, teams didn't trade that much because there was no rookie wage scale, and you were paying those draft picks, those top draft picks, like big money for the time. And so you didn't want to trade those guys and eat that money on your salary cap. Now there's the rookie wage scale. Players are almost like bargaining chips, coming and going. And so it's a lot more trading for sure.
I want to let everyone know that there is a Jets Collective X account before we sign off. Boy Green's handling that. You'll see clips and behind-the-scenes content from the Jets Collective every week. It's at NYJetsHMA. We will put that link in the description for the show. Gentlemen, we got 2 weeks until the NFL draft. In fact, 2 weeks from right now, there's a good chance that the Jets have already made at least that number 2 overall selection. So we'll have plenty to discuss next week, and we'll get you set for the draft. But BT, plug anything you have on BT Unleashed.
Well, BT Unleashed, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Some other content. Mentioned the Stephen A. spot, which was last week. That's up there. You and I collaborate on all the stuff here from Jets Collective, so that's at the bottom. Go through, navigate it, sub it, like it, get that traction going. So I appreciate the plug. But real quick on you there, Jake. So you've got your own show, obviously, and you do a great job with it. But you're going to the draft. When are you actually going to the draft? And how can people learn? And you're going to be at McFadden's. How could they join you? What if I want to come?
You can. I mean, please come on down. You could do BT Unleashed from McFadden's. We'll set up a table for you here. I'm messing around with the StreamYard settings here so everyone can see the graphic, the way they built out the layout here. There we go. People could take a screenshot of it. You can just find it on my personal X account. I've been tweeting out the graphic and all the info, but it's going to be all day. Doors open at noon on draft day at McFadden's. It is going to be a Jet fan takeover there. The owners of the bar are diehard Jet fans. They watch my show. That's how I got in touch with them.
Wow.
So there used to be a McFadden's in New York. Now this is the Pittsburgh location.
I used to go there all the time.
Yeah,
McFadden's in New York. Oh yeah,
me too.
Oh, yeah.
Me
Good
too.
spot.
So any Jet fan who's looking for a place to watch the draft and hang out with Jet fans during the day, it's right next to where all the action is. So it's free. Just show up. We're doing a raffle for anyone who RSVPs. I can't wait. Let's just hope the Jets don't screw it up.
Well, that looks like a lot more fun than where I'm going to be stuck in the Florham Park bunker, having to look at Brian Costello and all the other beat writers, and you'll be out there partying with all your Jet buddies. So just think of me when you're having fun. I'll be grinding on deadline.
We need you, Rich.
Well, if without you, we need you. Jets get you food. Do they hook you guys up because you're there all night? They take care of you, right?
Well, they feed us because we're kind of trapped there the whole day. So it is. It is a. And that, it gets pretty crazy, especially with 2 first-round picks and the possibility of trading. Maybe they end up with 3 first-round picks. So yeah, they do. It's a very much appreciated convenience and having food given to us instead of us having to go out and get it.
Love it, gentlemen. Awesome job. We had to work through some tech issues at the beginning, so we got it done. Big thank you to everyone who joined us live tonight. The super chats are great. The interaction and the comments were awesome as well. We'll have some clips from the show populating on the channel over the next few days. So make sure you are subscribed to the Jets Collective right here on YouTube. For Rich Cimini and Brandon Tierney, this is Jake Asman saying, enjoy your Thursday night. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week right here on the Jets Collective.